Hi, I'm here with the podium finishers from the 2023 Dipsea race, Paddy O'Leary, Julia Maxwell Bailey, and Chris Lundy. And we're here to hear about this year's race and get to know our podium finishers a bit better. So why don't we start with our winner of this year's race, Paddy O'Leary.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Paddy O'Leary. I'm an Irishman living in San Francisco the last 10 years, currently live in the inner Richmond. I work in San Francisco as a scientist at UCSF, and I've been trail running. I found trail running when I moved to San Francisco. I started trail running in 2015, and it was kind of the San Francisco Bay Area trail running community got me into the sport.
Thank you, Paddy. And your first Dipsea race this is your
This is my
race,
fourth. So my first one was in 2019. Took me a couple of years to get into it, but then when I finally got in 2019, I did 1 year in the runner section and came 499th. And then the last 3 years, 10th, 2nd, and first this year.
Awesome. Thank you, Paddy. Julia?
Hi, I'm Julia. I grew up in Marin, started trail running. The Dipsea was actually like my first real trail race that I ever did when I was 13. So that was back in 2009, and I finished 4th. And then I was basically hooked on the Dipsea from then, but couldn't really do it too often because it conflicted with high school and then collegiate running. So I was only able to do it once more. I think it was 2012, and I finished 9th. Then took a break from it. I was living in England for a while, and then just recently moved back and decided to just give it a go. I missed it, and it's just such a fun event. And then yeah, this year got 2nd. So
Yeah, great comeback. Thank you, Julia. And Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Lundy, and I have been running the Dipsea since 1997, so a very long time, but I haven't competed in it every year. Similar to Julia, I had a lot of conflict with other races. June is always a tough month, and so there were a number of years that I didn't run it and then sort of came back to it periodically. I got involved with the Dipsea after moving to Marin from the East Coast, and similar to Paddy, also through the trail running community. It just seemed like the thing to do. And I used to do they used to have training runs on Thursday nights called the Salmon Runs, and those were always, a really great event. And I think that's really what got me hooked on starting to actually do the race. And I think, once you've done it once, you understand the excitement and how fun it is. So I think we all keep trying to come back.
Thanks, Chris. And yeah, you really early on, you got 2nd in 1999. So definitely a long history of not just being involved in the Dipsea, but placing super high in it. It's really interesting watching the results through the years. And now that the website has a searchable database, you can actually look back and see year to year how you did, which is pretty cool. I want to I guess just jump into the narrative of the race. So all of you had well, none of you started quite near the front this year. We have Paddy pretty close to the back. You had was it 2-minute head start this year? Julia, you're the Max women's the women's scratch group, being at age 27. And Chris, you finally shed your winner's penalty from 2018. So you actually gained 2 head start minutes this year, correct?
Yes, correct.
So what group did that put you in?
I don't remember. I had a 14-minute head start.
14.
I think it was
All right. Awesome. So that would be, I think, 5 minutes ahead of Julia.
Yes.
And 12 minutes ahead of Paddy.
Right.
So it was really interesting looking at it unfold in that recent addition to the Dipsea website, where it kind of showed everyone's positions, and you can see all 3 of you actually kind of popping out of nowhere clearly like in the first few miles, just overtaking hundreds of runners. So could we actually start with Paddy from the back? What was it like those first 5 or so miles getting up to Cardiac?
Oh, the same as it always is, just chaotic. Chaotic in the best sense of the word. Yeah, like hitting the stairs. I took it out pretty hot from the Y group. Kind of wasn't intentional as well. I think I was standing at the start line talking to Jeff Stern about a different race we're doing in a few weeks, and all of a sudden they went 2-1, and I was like, oh wait, it's starting, and I just took off and just kept going. I definitely thought I was going to run, like I might have been going way too hard into the stairs, and at least when you have the logjam of the stairs, it slows you down a bit, so you can actually like collect yourself a little bit when we have inevitably take it out too hard. Yeah, same as every year, just try to catch as many people in the wide sections when you can onto the highway, pass as many as you can. Down through Suicide, it wasn't as slippery as I thought, or dusty as I thought it would be, so actually we were able to move down there pretty quick without any falls, which is great. Bit of definitely going into the bushes at times. Across into Muir Woods, and I definitely was looking at my watch, and like I had tried to remember the positions I was, or the time I was at each like checkpoint, like at Muir Woods or Cardiac, and I think I noticed I was running a little bit ahead of that, so I figured I was running a good race, and I knew I would have to run the best race I've ever ran, and minutes faster than I'd run before to be at all competitive in this one. When I got to Cardiac, I found out I was in 11th place, and I think I was like 10th maybe last year, and I was 6.5 minutes behind Diana. Then I knew there was a chance, but also at the time I wasn't even sure if I would have been able to catch her, because 10.5 or 6.5 minutes seems like a very long time with only 2.5 miles to go from the top.
For sure. So was that the first time you were aware of your place in the race, was Cardiac?
Yeah, I think it's every year. It's the only time you're able to be aware of where you are in the race, because there's so many people in it. Yeah, you just hope you pass enough. Yeah, that's every year. I think Cardiac is the first time I get a good estimate, and then usually you get like 5 or 6 different estimates from people. Someone says you're 50th, someone says you're winning the race, someone says you're in 10th. So this time I only remember 2 people saying something to me, because I was in kind of either super focused or super like energy depleted. I didn't even realize, I didn't see any faces up there, but I heard 2 voices say 6.5 minutes. So I was like, oh, must be 6.5 minutes then. It's consistent.
Yeah, that's a big gap to make up. So it's amazing how fast you're able to fly on the downhill. Julia, what was your first 4.5 or so miles like up to Cardiac?
Yeah, pretty similar to Paddy. It was my first year as like a scratch woman, so I was kind of unsure of like what it was going to be like, having to overtake more people than I had before. And yeah, I think I went off a little bit hard from the starting line, and then luckily had like Clara Peterson to run with on the stairs, and she was kind of helping like make some space and pass people there. And then I was just kind of pushing all the way to Muir Woods, and then by there it kind of started clearing out a bit. I mean, you still had like quite a few people coming up Dynamite, and then basically from like, I'd say maybe a third of the way or halfway up Hogsback, there was only, people became way more sparse. Like I was kind of passing like little groups, or like one or 2 people here. And then, yeah, I think it was the same for me at the top of Cardiac. I think I was in 4th. I can't remember if they told me 3rd or 4th. But I knew that it was Chris and Diana ahead of me. And I was like, I don't know if I can get them. Because I know Chris is an awesome downhill runner, especially. So from there, it was just like trying to, like switch gears from the uphill legs to the downhill legs, and then just like barrel down, swoop, and try to, and I also knew, the fast guys were coming. So I think it was just past the top of Insult that I heard, because there was a group cheering at the bottom, and I heard they cheered for me, and then I heard like, I don't know, 10 seconds later them cheering for Paddy, and I was like, oh God, this is it. But but yeah, it was cool. And then yeah, seeing like cresting the hill onto the moors, seeing him go and going and passing Chris and Diana eventually. So it was just cool being able to see it all unfold like that.
Yeah, and so were you with Claire Peterson just for the first half mile or so, or did you run a good portion of the race together?
Yeah, it was mostly just the stairs together. I'm sure she was right behind me. Like I kept kind of looking back, coming down to the Muir Woods. But yeah, I think because I went out a little bit harder, and she's just a more experienced racer. I think maybe she conserved a little bit and had a bit more like made up some of the time on the like the long climb up Dynamite and Hogsback. But yeah, I guess I was pretty much passing people on my own for most of it.
That's definitely a different feeling doing that on your own versus with a running partner right next to you.
Yeah, definitely.
Chris, what was your ascent up to Cardiac like? The first
Well, so I've never started in a group that far up, and it really is a much thinner field. So I did not have nearly as many people to sort of weave through and get past. There were definitely plenty of people on the stairs, and and so that's always, I think, no matter what group you're in, there's there's going to be people to pass going up there. But it thinned out very, very quickly. And so then I was just trying to, pass as many people as I could. I got up to Cardiac in second. And then at that point, someone said, "Oh, Diana is 2 minutes and 40 seconds ahead." So I was pretty sure I could make that up. So I did the best I could to get down. However, just after insult, I saw Diana just as I was cresting the hill. I could see her coming down maybe 100 yards ahead, because you can suddenly see everyone on the moors. And just as I saw Diana, I could kind of sense that there was somebody behind me. And then as I went a little further down and started passing her, I could definitely hear footsteps, and I definitely knew it was Paddy. So, because I've heard those steps before. So I, at that point, same thing, like, oh no, here we go. So I had my lead for really 2 to 3 seconds max, and then Paddy essentially passed both of us almost at the same time. And that was that. Never saw him again. And yeah, just kept going through. And I wasn't quite expecting Julia that late, because I thought I'd made it to the point where she wasn't going to make that up, but the speedy little thing caught me on the last bit.
Awesome. And yeah, it's really interesting hearing the moors come up so much, because now that you're required to take the moors, it sounds like you're able to really get a grasp on your position and other runners' positions a lot better than you would have been able to on the highway shortcuts. So Chris, actually, as someone who's done the race for a couple decades, maybe you could tell a little more about your impressions of the difference in having to take the moors now.
Yeah, it's a huge difference, actually. And I really enjoy the doors. And so I've been really disappointed the last few races that they weren't part of the race. I think it's really part of what makes the Dipsea, is having those weird shortcuts where, sometimes it's a disadvantage. You can get stuck behind people. Other times, if you're able to move through there really quickly, it's perfect. You can get away from people. And I just enjoy doing them. And each year, lately, I feel like they've gotten, before we switched to the moors, the doors were getting a little easier. Like they put some steps in, they, tried to even it out. And so each time I was like, oh no, they're making the course too easy, And with the switch to the moors, even though it's longer, and it adds a little bit of time. I think it adds about a minute to people's times taking the moors based on my calculations, depending on the person. But it's, it becomes much more of a sprint at the end for the last mile instead of having anything technical in it. So I do think it changes the race quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
gives people more time to catch up with you as well. So it kind of gives advantage to the later starters because they
Yeah.
have more runway.
Yeah, a little bit more. And I know one year I was I think I could have won that year, but it was the year Hans Schmidt won. And what happened was or sorry, no, there was someone else ahead. I think it was Diana, but I got bottlenecked behind Hans Schmidt and Brian Pilcher in one of the doors. And neither of them, I couldn't get around either of them because Brian wouldn't pass Hans and I couldn't pass both at the same time. We're all afraid of like knocking over the seniors. And so it ended that year. The leader ended up getting away because the three of us were just sort of stuck in there. So it can work either way.
Yeah, that was the year that came down to the three of you, Diana, Chris, and Brian, right, at the finish line.
Yeah.
I think it was fourth that year. That was a really awesome finish.
Yeah.
And Julia, that added minute or so on the moors makes your time even more impressive. Like you were cutting it close to 57, which is a really incredible time. So I'm curious about if there was any part in the race that you could give credit to the time being so incredibly fast, especially with that additional part on the course. Like, where's your strength on the Dipsea course?
Yeah, thank you. I surprised myself at the time because I was quite a bit faster than I'd run. I got in fastest woman once before, but it was a few minutes slower. But I think I just, part of it was just pushing from the start, I think, which, I mean, looking back on it, I was a little bit of like, am I like, do I need to like put on the brakes a little bit? Am I like going to run out of gas? But I think that it worked well for me because I looked at my watch at Muir Woods and I was maybe like 2 minutes faster than I thought I was going to be. And then I think that gave me some confidence and was like, okay, I feel good. Like my legs are fresh. I've got the adrenaline of, people cheering and passing people. And yeah. And then I think also where I made up the time from my previous races, because I was, like a young teenager when I raced it before, I think I'm just, I have a lot more strength now. So just on like the long climb from Dynamite, from the bottom of Muir Woods up Dynamite and then Hogsback, I think just being like older and stronger and more running experience is probably where I made that up. If anything, I think probably I should practice the downhills a bit more. It was a little bit slippery out there because it was a bit like misty and everything. It wasn't too bad, but I was a bit I guess cautious because I really didn't want to fall. But yeah, I think just the strength of having just more training under my belt probably helps me a lot.
Yeah, that's really amazing to hear about the little bits where you could make up even more time potentially for next year when Paddy will have a winner's penalty, and that puts you right up there. I'd love to hear, starting with you, Paddy, kind of your impressions over the last mile. I heard you were under 5 minute pace for the last mile, which I mean, my brain can't even fathom. But what were you thinking as you came onto the highway and then down that finishing chute?
Don't fall. That was the main thing that was in my mind. Don't fall, don't run into a tree or something like that, or run off miss a switchback and go into a ditch of poison oak. That was the main thing going through my head. But also I was concerned about people catching me. There was some young guys in, like, there's the many fellas, Alex Varner, Jeff Stern, people like that in the Y section, but then also in the Z, there was like Fred Huxham, who was, I think, like he was an all-star at University of Washington. He ran some absurdly fast 10K, which I don't really know statistics for track running, but it was very fast. I think it was his PR. So it was like, and I'd seen some of the times he'd done up cardiac. So I'm like, that guy is going to come at some stage. He's going to catch me. So get across the finish line before he does. So that was the main concern. Don't get caught and don't. So like, not till I turned the last corner did I think I had it won. Because anything can happen. I could get a stitch, I could get a cramp, and be lying on the side of the trail with 200 meters to go. So just keep moving, keep going. That's the main thing that's going through my mind. Yeah, and don't fall over the style.
That's awesome. And I loved seeing the finishing footage of Dr. Elmo and Don Pickett, the 1968 winner, holding the finishing tape for you, and just seeing the history of the race there.
Yeah, that was super cool to get to chat to them right after the race whenever I was able to catch my breath.
And Julia, for you, what was going through your mind as you came to the finish?
Oh, just like, I don't like, just the joy. I don't know. I was having memories of like the first time I came through the finish line, and I was just like, this is so fun. And, you know, people, it's such a, like, there's so much history with the race. Like, you know, people, you have so many people who've done it like their whole lives. You got like, you know, people, so many volunteers who come out, people who just like, who love it and like know all of the quirky facts and everything. So just being able to like round the corner and have the whole Dipsea community there, and know that I was actually in second and that I wasn't going to get nipped at the end by more fast people coming to get me. So and feeling good that I was able to like actually kick it in a little bit. I haven't done that in a while, so that just felt good.
Awesome. And Chris, what was going through your mind that last bit of the race?
Not a whole lot. I was just trying to make sure no one else from behind was going to catch me, and so I just pulled it in the best I could.
Awesome. Yeah, and you've been involved in some great battles at the finish before, so maybe it was a little nice this year not to have to completely sprint with someone at the finish line. Awesome. Let's see. I'm curious, goals for 2024 Dipsea and beyond, what you guys are thinking about next year's race and just your future in the Dipsea. Clearly, all of you are passionate about the race, and all live locally enough that you have access to the course, the key for training. But what are you thinking for next year and beyond? Why don't we start with Chris?
Next year, I'm mostly thinking I'd like to get a consistent training block in, which was missing this year. And I think I can run a bit faster. So I'm hoping to run, you know, maybe a minute faster. I think that's probably about the best I can hope for. But mostly I do really enjoy the training for it, and usually get going on that in January, and then have a good long time to prep for it. But yeah, this year was a late start, so I felt a bit rushed and didn't get to really enjoy it as much as I normally would.
And do you make it onto the course often in your training? Is being on the trail a big part of it, or do you train more?
Not necessarily. You know, and just I've run the race many times, and it really, I do get on the course periodically, but it doesn't make that much of a difference whether I'm on it 8 times or if I'm on it 3 times. You know, I know the course really well. I try to check it out at least a few times, and it is a great place to do workouts, but anywhere on TAM you can get equivalent. If you happen to be in a really flat area, though, I think the training would be lacking. But any place that's got enough hills that are similar is totally fine.
Awesome. Julia, what are you thinking about next year and beyond?
Yeah, I would love to just try to, if I can, run faster than I did this year. I think that's always a good goal, especially, I guess, because this is my first year back in the race for quite a while. So yeah, I mean, I was really like happy with my time this year. I'd love to hopefully maybe try to break 57. That would be awesome. Like I said, maybe work some more on the downhills, where maybe I can make up some of that time and yeah, just try to hone in like those areas.
Awesome. And Paddy, what about you?
My ultimate goal is to still be able to do this race in 30 or 40 years time. That's more important than any individual result for me on this. And a big part of that I found that I've included into my training is trying to do strength training. And as I've got older, like I'm getting more injuries and little tweaks and things like that, where like true to like 5 years ago, I'd never got injured, and now I'm getting a lot more throughout the year. So I've tried to incorporate a lot more strength training into my things, so I can still compete at a high level, but also so I can still be doing activity in 40, 50 years, like some people have been doing the Dipsea, like you look at the Dipsea Demon and 66 years of it. Like that's ultimately what I want to be able to do. So for my training, I've started to incorporate a lot of strength training the last year or two, and actually I hadn't really seen it reap dividends in terms of times till the Dipsea this year. This is the first time I've noticed that, oh, it's working, which is really cool. It was really fulfilling. In terms of training on the course, I don't find it too necessary to get out on the course before. I've ran those trails enough. I think I can get as good a workout doing up Tam or up Mount Sutro here in the city. I kind of think if I overtrain on a course, I get kind of frustrated and bored with it as well. So that's why it's nice having the novelty of getting out on the course and race day and having not overdone it in the lead up to it. And then goals for next year, I've going to have a few more 100 people to pass, so I'm excited about that because I actually love that part of it. So yeah, just if I could run a faster split time, that'd be great. But I kind of have to see how the rest of my race season pans out as well, because I'm pretty bad at picking a huge array of distances of races to race in 1 year. So I think one thing over the next year, I should really focus on specializing and actually having a sensible training block leading up to a series of short races or medium races or long races. But the Dipsea will always be part of that.
Yeah, your racing calendar in particular seems really June heavy and early July with Mount Marathon and everything. Like that's a lot of travel and a lot of racing, but it sounds like a lot of short to medium distance racing.
They're all the similar distances, at least, versus 2 months ago I was training for 100 miler, which is a completely different sport to that.
Yeah.
But I was good. I was able to get a good month of training leading up, like a rest after that race, and then a good month of training leading up into the Dipsea / Broken Arrow / Mount Marathon block I have right now.
Awesome. I think what I'd like to conclude with is if you have a Dipsea hero, who it is and why. So why don't we start with you, Julia?
I'm gonna say Chris, because if I'm correct, I think you have the most fastest women's times, and I think that's just like amazing. And I think the Dipsea, like one of the things that's so cool about it is that obviously, you know, you've got the head starts and you never know like who's gonna be passing you or who's gonna be ahead of you to try to go get. But like one thing that you can try to focus on and you have a bit more control over is just how fast you can run. So that's like when I'm nervous, that's always one thing that I'm like trying to go for, is like, okay, just have that one goal in the back of your mind. So I think the fact that you've been able to get fastest women so many times is just super impressive.
Awesome.
Thanks.
What about you, Paddy?
My choice would be, it's less about the athletic part of the Dipsea, but more about, I love the Dipsea because of the stories that are part of it, and the story is the rich history of it. So Barry Spitz is my Dipsea hero for sure. I just love hearing the different stories about the history of this race and the deep history of it, and I love resharing those stories as accurately and as best I can. I think Barry Spitz, the Dipsea is such an amazing history. It's cool to have that chronicled and to be able to continue to share that with our own community and with the community, the running community beyond.
Awesome. And yeah, I was actually, when I listened to your podcast with Dylan Bowman, I was super impressed at how many stats you already had memorized, and just you really have taken in the history and doing an awesome job spreading the stories and telling people about the amazing quirks of the race. So
most of the stats aren't fully accurate, so like I'm not as accurate a storyteller, I think, as Barry and as yourself, but I try my best. I need to write down my notes better, and actually so I say the right things. I think I made some mistakes in that in my fact sharing.
It sounded pretty accurate to me, and I know quite a few of them, so that was great. What about you, Chris?
So I would say Melody Schultz, who is a 3-time Dipsea winner, and she came to running late and had amazing success in the age groups, and there was one race in particular, that 1999 race, where she had a fantastic race and went on to win, but I also had the race of my life and was 5 minutes behind her at the finish. So that tells you just how good she is, you know, and the handicap system was appropriate for someone her age, and she still had that much of a gap on me at the end. So I've been forever impressed with that to this day.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. And she's definitely, in addition to being a great athlete, her sportsmanship is really awesome, and just such a nice person.
Yes. Yeah.
Super. Thank you all for speaking with me. I'm going to stop the recording now.